We are going to cover if statements, and as part of what we're covering, we are going to review conditional operators and logical operators. If you've used other programming languages, you've used similar operators in the past. We're just going to quick review how Python uses them. And the conditionals are typically used in if statements. They are also used in while statements. In Python, those are basically the two places that you're going to see them. The conditional operators are pretty standard. It's two equal signs, checking for equality. Exclamation equal means not equal. We've got less than equal, greater than or equal. If you're using an if statement or a while statement, Python uses that indentation to indicate what it should do while the condition tests true. On a single-sided if, all you're doing is checking to see if it's true. You don't really care what it's going to do if it's false. So this little example here deals with hours worked and pay. And if they have worked more than 40 hours, then they're going to get overtime pay. So you can see down here, it's calculating the overtime. We're not really concerned with anything less than 40 because they're not going to get overtime in that case. A double-sided if has an else that goes with it. So you've got your if statement and the condition being checked, and then you've got all of the statements that execute if it's true. You also have an else, and then you've got all of the statements that are going to execute if it is false. Some key things to remember. At the end of the if and at the end of the else, you need colons. And the if and the else are not indented. We're only indenting these statements that we're going to execute. And the indentation has to be the same on all of them. Okay, so if I try doing something like this where I have different indentation, it is not going to like that. It is considered best practice to put spaces between your variables and the values you're checking and the operator. You can see how I have that spaced out. It's easier to read than if you do it like this, where you're kind of smashing everything together. And we'll add a little else here. Okay, so now we've told it to do something if it's false. And they do have overtime, so let's change their hours. And now they do not. This little example is from the book. And you can see that we have a list of cars. We're doing a loop so that we can access each car. And then it's checking each one to see if it's a BMW. If it is printing all uppercase letters. Otherwise, it is using the title method. And that's what the output looks like. A couple things to remember about conditionals. Equality checks are two equal signs. Inequality is an exclamation equal sign. And if you're looking for less than or equal to or greater than or equal to, the equal sign comes second. If statements with logical operators are a little bit more complicated because you want to check more than one thing. If you use and, all of the conditions have to be true in order for the true statements to be executed. So I'm going to copy this. And what this is saying is that in order for the overtime to be calculated and printed, both hours has to be greater than 40 and the department has to be 10. If only one of them is true, this condition is going to test false. Both have to be true for the condition to test true. Okay, and in this case, the department is going to make it test false. Okay, so you can see they don't have any overtime. Now, if I change department to 10, it is going to test true because the hours are over 40 and the department is equal to 10. So it is calculating the overtime pay. Now, I could add another and onto this. You're not limited to a particular number, but just remember that when you use and, everything you're testing has to be true. If one of them tests false, everything is false. So I will check pay rate. We'll do pay rate less than 25. So this is still going to be true because the pay rate is less than 25. So even though I added another condition, it's still going to calculate the overtime. But if I change the pay rate to 30, now it is going to test false because even though the hours are true and the department is true, the pay rate is going to be false. And that makes all of it false. Now, and is more restrictive than or. If you use an or, only one thing has to test true. So basically, the minute a condition tests true, everything is true, and it's going to execute the true statements. So let's change this to or. And actually, this doesn't make as much sense. I think we're going to still do hours greater than 40, and we're going to put the or portion in here. Department is 10, or. So this is a more complicated condition. It's going to do what's in the parentheses first. So it's going to say, is the department 10 or the pay rate less than 25? Is one of those true? Yeah, it is. So both are going to test true, okay? Because with an or, only one thing has to be true. Then we've got this and in between. So what it's going to look for is that one of these are true, and also the hours have to be greater than 40. So if the hours are greater than 40 and one of these is true, it's going to calculate overtime. Now, what if the hours are not greater than 40? Well, what's going to happen is that's going to be false. Okay, and this is still going to test true because one of these is true. Because we have an and in between, the whole thing is going to test false because hours, that test is false. Now, typically how or is used, we'll change this a little bit. Let's look at department. And we'll give them a bonus. So if they work in those departments, they're going to get a bonus. And if they don't, they get nothing. We're going to make sure we've got our indentation set correctly. And then this should not be indented because we are going to print your bonus is. And in order for us to use that, we're going to have bonus up here. And we'll set it to 50. All right, so let's run this. Okay, and the department was 10, so that did test true, and they got a bonus. So let's change their department to 60. So it's not 10, not 20, not 30. They're not going to get a bonus. Okay, so with or, only one of them has to be true. So if we changed it to 30, they would get a bonus. So we've got and, we've also got or, and those can be used to test multiple conditions. And you can actually create some more complex conditions using those operators. We also have in and not in. You can use those with lists. And you can check to see if a value is in a list or if it's not in a list. So this little example, I generate 2,000 invoice numbers. And then I check to see if an invoice is in that list that I generated. If it is, I print a message. If it's not, I print a different message. And you can see that it was processed today. Now, what would I do if it wasn't in there? Let's change the number because actually we can change our range here to 1,000. So now it's not going to be in the list, right? So we need to tell them your invoice was not processed today. If it is in the list, we'll tell them your invoice was processed. And let's run that. And you can see that it was not processed. Now, how you can also use not in is you can check to see if something is in a list. And if it's not in the list, you can simply add it. And that's what I did in this example. So we have a list of zoo animals. If Arctic fox is not in the list, then let's go ahead and add it. And you can see that it was added. Now you can also check to see if a list is empty. And that is just simply by putting the name of the list. You can just say if list. If the list is true, okay, there's something there. So what this example is doing is it's looking at zoo animals. And so if there's something there, it's going to print they exist. Otherwise, it's going to add to the list. And you can see that it did add to the list. Now let's put something in here and see what happens. Okay, the minute we put something in zoo animals, it's going to test true and prints they exist, and it shows us what's in the list, and it does not append the extra animals. Okay, so we can check to see if it's there. Okay, if there's something there, it is going to test true. In Python, we do have Booleans. We have Boolean expressions, which are true or false. And so you can create variables and set them equal to true, or you can set them equal to false. And this is done quite often in games, right? So, you have extra lives. You might prompt to see if somebody wants to keep playing. All sorts of ways that you would use Boolean expressions in games. Okay, and Python supports that. Nested if statements are if statements where you check a condition, you do a set of commands if it's true. If it's false, you want to check another condition. And that second condition, you're only checking if the original was false. Okay, so that is a nested if else. And you can have lots of else if blocks. And in Python, the way that we write this is we do an elif statement. It kind of combines else and if. I guess it saves you typing 2 characters and a space, but that is how you would code that up. Okay, so I guess we could quick make a little example here. So if, how do we want to code this? Okay, we're going to check for some animals. So we'll say if Arctic fox in zoo animals, print great zoo. So if they don't have the Arctic fox, we'll check for polar bear. And then we will print great zoo. And then we'll do another little check here. So you can have as many of these statements as you need. And you can end it with an elif, or you can end it with an else. And I think it's easiest to line these up. They do have like little lines in here. They're hard to see, but I do try to line it up on those lines. Let's see. So we checked polar bear. Let's check for something else. Meerkat. And let's check for penguin. All right. If they don't have any of those, they need to get more animals in their zoo. You need more animals. All right. So let's run this. Oops. Forgot my colon. You will find that I do that quite often. Let's do this again. And you can see it went all the way down to you need more animals. Now, if I add one of these that it's looking for, let's add a meerkat. You'll see it prints out great zoo. So that's basically how you do an elif. Now this little example is importing dates. We're importing date time. We have a tuple for the days of the week. And then we are retrieving the current date. We are using that date object called now to get the weekday. And what it's going to retrieve is an integer. So it's going to be 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or 6. Okay, and a 0 is Monday. So we are subscripting in to our weekdays tuple with the day of the week. It's going to retrieve the text and store it. And then we have this elif block. Okay, so you will be keying in something similar as part of one of your assignments to give you more practice. So the hands-on, going to be a separate video for this. So we are moving right along here, working with loops, if statements, and multiple lists. So we kind of looked at a similar example earlier where we had the elif. This is a variation where we are combining a loop with an if-else. And this is very typical in programming, where you kind of nest these different structures. So we're still importing the date time. We've got the days of the week. Then we have two different menus, one for weekend, one for weekdays. We are retrieving the current date. We are getting that integer. And we are subscripting into weekdays so that we know if it's Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, etc. And then we're checking today, which is storing the day of the week, to see if it's Friday or Saturday or Sunday. So you can see we are using that logical operator. If it's any of those, that means weekend. So we're going to give them the weekend specials. So we print out a little heading, and then we loop through and print out those weekend items, which would be lobster prime rib and Parmesan crusted cod. Okay, so if it's not today, Friday, Saturday, or Sunday, okay, then we are using the weekday specials and we're printing those out. So when you run this, you're going to get different output depending on what day of the week it is. Here is another example using date time again. And this is figuring out how many days do we have until the weekend. Okay, so this is all about the weekend. So we've got our weekday tuple. We are retrieving the current date. We are still grabbing that integer. We're still subscripting in, but now we are calculating days to the weekend. So we do 6 minus day of the week. Now, why are we using a 6? Well, mainly because it's counting 0 as Monday. Okay, so even though there's 7 days, 0 counts. So we are using 6 here. And then we're going to print out how many days there are to the weekend, and we're subtracting 1 out of that. And that is just so it displays the number properly. And then we've got a little flag that we are setting false. So we're using a Boolean here. So quote printed, meaning was the quote printed? Okay, we're setting that to false. And then we've got a for loop. Inside the for loop, we have a nested if else. And so we are going into weekdays using the day of the week as our starting point, and our ending point is the days to the weekend. Okay, and then we're checking to see if it's Sunday and if we haven't printed a quote. Okay, so printed quote is false. So if it is Sunday and printed quote is false, then it is printing out Sunday is my fun day, right? And changing quote printed to true. Otherwise, it's looking at Monday or Tuesday or Wednesday, making sure that the quote printed was false and printing out this message. Okay, otherwise it's looking at Thursday and making sure the quote wasn't printed. And then it's checking at last here to see if the quote was printed. And if it wasn't, it means it's the weekend. Okay, so that's kind of how it's working. And we're using the quote printed just so that we don't have to check every single day individually. Okay, so we left out several days. And so basically by the time it gets down here, right, we know it wasn't Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. We know it wasn't Sunday. So that pretty much leaves Friday and Saturday. So uh, we're just checking to make sure no quote printed and then printing out a message. Let's see, another little example. We've got two different lists, exhibits closed and exhibits that we want to see. And so we have a for loop, and the variable that's going to store each item is exhibits. Okay, and we're using the want to see list. So the first time through, exhibits is going to have lions. Okay, so if the lions are in exhibit closed, they are not. Okay, so that's false. We come down here, print you are in luck. The lions exhibit is open today. So now we do the next one, tigers. If tigers is in exhibit closed, and it is, that is true. So then we print, sorry, the tigers exhibit is closed. Okay, then we do bears. If bears is in exhibit closed, it is not. So they are in luck. It's open. We go down to snow monkeys. That is in exhibit closed. So we print the message, sorry, the exhibit is closed, and so on. Okay, so that's an example of how you would use two lists. And we have this fun little exercise where you're going to have practice using Booleans, practice using a for loop, practice using elif, all sorts of practice in here for you. We've also got logical operators. So this will give you some practice doing a little more complex operation. And let's move on. That looks like all of the material that I need to cover in the lecture, and there will be a couple separate videos on these hands-on.